Woo! We back for another one, babies. All right. Now, I did a part one. I didn't know there was more, but there's more to Final Fantasy 14. Um, I want to look at something real quick. So this is more lost history. Okay.
All right, Boomer.
So we're gonna go ahead and watch this more lost history. Um, So this is basically 7 more features that they took off. So there's a part 2 to this. So let's go ahead and get into it, babies.
All right, Boomers, here we are again. Up first, we have stat allocation. Back in ye olden days, aka before 2017, you didn't automatically skill up after leveling. You had to manually spend your attributes.
I remember this. I hated this. I'm gonna be honest with you. I hated it because peeps, listen to me. People used to actually. I want you to look at this. All right, look. You see my cursor, right? I want you to look at this. You have these stats. So every time you leveled up, you would get like these bonus stats, and then you would apply them. Now, here's a fun factor. If you're a white mage, I have seen white mages put all their stats into strength. So I want y'all to understand something. Everything that's in green applies to tanks and physical DPS. Everything in purple applies to ranged DPS and your healers. People were literally putting their points in strength. So you had a strong ass strong ass white mage that could knock someone in the head with a damn stick, but couldn't cast, couldn't heal you for nothing. That's crazy. I'm glad they did away with that. Because I remember back when I started, I didn't understand a lot of it. I put a lot of my stats, to be honest with you, in I believe intelligence. Because I actually read what because if you hover over it, a dialogue box will come up and tell you what the stat means. I put a lot of my stats in intelligence. But what I really should have been doing is putting them between mind and intelligence as a white mage. Same thing with Summoner. I think I was supposed to put a lot of mine in intelligence and mind.
Points like an
Yeah.
old school RPG, and you could choose to invest in any of the main stats. Because this allowed you to make mistakes and say, be a suspiciously strong white mage, the devs had to remove it. It was also a pain for arcanists who played both Scholar and Summoner, as the stat points were technically tied to class, not job, so they would have to buy a little book that let them respec every time they wanted to swap. Number 2 is the highly requested cross-classing.
I remember that bullshit. Summoner and Scholar, because they're the same damn class. So you once you hit 30 and your Arcanist, then you can choose either one. And I remember you had to, so you would put all your stats in one thing, and if you wanted to change to a Scholar, you would have to buy this book from your grand company to switch the stats, which I thought was so silly to me. As a matter of fact, yeah, we're not gonna get into that. That was stupid.
Many
Cross
graybeards in the
classing.
last video lamented the
Oh,
absence of this one.
I remember cross classing. That was just stupid too. So I'm gonna give you an example. So white mages, they have this thing called raise, which is your ability to, if a person dies, you click raise and it brings them back to life. When you're in battle, there is one other ability you want, and that's swift cast. What? Because the ability raise takes 7 seconds. 7 seconds to resurrect that person. So swift cast basically makes the next spell go off without a wait time. In order to get swift cast, you had to play Black Mage and level up to I think it was 26 to get swift cast. And that was a lot. That's how you had to get a lot of these cross class abilities. Hell, I think that was one ability you had to level all the way up to like 50. It's crazy.
And honestly, for good reason. I just got lazy and cut it. But it was a huge part of the game's history, so now I'll give it some proper treatment. Cross-classing has always been a part of Final Fantasy. Subjobbing in games like Tactics, FF5, and of course FF11 was huge.
Final Fantasy Tactics had that same
was a little
thing
half-baked,
too,
but it was still cool.
cross-classing.
Today's role actions are the watered-down remnants of this system.
Yeah.
Back then, when you leveled a class up, certain abilities would be unlocked for you to use in a semi-global pool. Not every ability could be cross-classed, and not every class could use every eligible ability. This was muddied even more by the fact that equipping a job stone further limited your options and cross-class slots. The real death knell here, though, was what we might call the meta. Some cross-class skills were just funny, like Paladin could take Raise, but they couldn't use it in combat.
I feel like he's incorrect on that. I think you could use raise. 'Cause I remember some stupid shit like that. But they would only.
Others, however, were simply non-negotiable. Swiftcast, today a basic role action for all healers and casters, was then a level 26 Thaumaturge ability.
There you go,
Even
yeah.
today, most people despise leveling and playing Black Mage, but back then when leveling was all around slower and Black Mage more boring, this
Yeah.
was a pretty big demand. If you wanted to be a serious player though, you couldn't show up to content as a White Mage
Without Swiftcast, that is true. It helped a lot. I feel like he's incorrect. I think you could at one point. I don't know which tank it was. I guess it was Paladin that could equip raise. And I think Black Mage. I feel like there was Black Mage. I feel like Black Mage and he might be right. I know there was a couple classes that could actually equip raise and they could use raise. Which means they would have had to have played Conjurer at some point. I didn't like it. I thought it was kind of silly. I'm glad they changed that.
without Swiftcast. Black Mage wasn't spared either though, because while Swiftcast might have been native, the meta also dictated that they had to level Archer to get Raging Strikes, a significant DPS boost, and Quelling Strikes to manage their enmity.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I really needed Quelling Strikes. But I didn't want to play Bard. That would have been a useful skill for me. Now I did get Raging Strikes, which as a summoner, and yeah, it was very interesting. Super interesting. But Quelling Strikes I probably needed because and see you see there affinity, you see all all the people that can equip it. If you notice what's missing from this list, no, actually everybody's here. Everybody's here. Never mind. Everybody's here. So yeah, that skills. I needed it, but I just didn't want to feel like working with it.
Which was much more important back then. Now, I've specified Black Mage and Archer here for another reason. Besides getting these special cross-class abilities, you simply could not unlock BLM without having Archer leveled, literally. Not only were your cross-class skills important, but jobs had subclass requirements.
Let's see. Oh, I didn't know that, peeps. That's crazy. That's crazy. I didn't know that. I believe it. It makes sense though.
And Black Mage happened to be level 30 Thaumaturge and level 15 Archer.
Yeah, that's crazy. I think I do remember some bullshit like that. To get the Black Mage, you had to be, because I think it would tell you in the game what you needed to do. So to get Summoner, you just need to be an Arcanist, and then Thermometer level 15. That's if you didn't select your. So if you didn't select Summoner, in order to equip Summoner, and they see even with me, um, Yeah, I remember. Yeah, this is about right. Because I remember I had to do thermometer just to become a summoner. I couldn't even do. I did Arcanist, got it to 50, but in order for me to do Summoner, I had to go and do Thermometer to level 15, which was kind of stupid because your first dungeon don't even start until like what level? I think it's 17.
Only after satisfying your subclass requirement could you then undertake the quest chain to unlock your actual job. For number 3, we're going to dwell on Archer a bit longer and talk about Bard. Today, Bard is the red-headed stepchild of Fizz Ranged. They're not quite selfish DPS like Machinist, but they're also not the party support gods that Dancers are. This is a fitting legacy, because Square had no idea what the fuck they were doing back then either. Before Heavensward, Bard was the only Fizz Ranged, and it was a lot different from today. However, I want to zoom in on specifically its limit break, which was not the Varus E arrow spam that they have now, but a literal copy-paste of White Mage's healer LB3. Weird system.
I remember that too. They could actually resurrect all the people, which was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. But it is kind of weird that they did that.
Moving on to number 4, let's talk about healers now. Today, every healer has pretty much the same damage template. A single target cast, a single target dot, an AoE cast, and then some minor flavor of special damage like White Mage's Assize or Sage's Phlegma. This was not always the case. Before Shadowbringers, Scholar and Old Summoner shared a lot of common tools owing to their common Arcanist ancestry. Scholar, a healer, had things like Shadow Flare and an AoE dot spread. The big healer DPS spell was the cross-class Cleric stance, which went through 2 iterations. Originally, it swapped your intelligence.
I hated this skill. I hated it. I hated it, peeps. As a white mage, as a conjurer, whatever you want to call it, you had to switch between stances. And I will tell you, all I'm going to say is a couple of tanks may have or may not have died during raid. And all I'm going to say on that is if they did die, it was not my fault. Blame it on this ability. Listen. So you had Cleric stance. Now, here's a problem that I had with Cleric stance. You see that symbol there? There's the one side, the left side that is with the background that's red, okay? That one made it to where it switched your mind, your intelligence and mind. And if I'm recalling, mind was the healing ability, intelligence was the DPS ability. So your mind is going to be a lot way higher than the intelligence. That's how it's supposed to be. Switching between stances will switch the attribute points. So if you have the wrong stance and you try to heal, your tank gonna die. That's all I'm gonna say. Your tank gonna die because it doesn't, because your stuff is switched. You had to select cleric stance so you could switch them. That way you could heal more and do less DPS. Crazy. Crazy, people.
Intelligence and mind stats further buffed your damage and nerfed your heals, and locked you out of swapping back for 5 seconds. They tried to simplify this stance dancing in Stormblood by making Cleric stance a flat 5% damage increase on a 90-second cooldown, essentially just turning it into a generic buff, but finally gutted it entirely in 5.
Yeah, they need to get rid of that. I hated that crap. Yeah, that it was stupid. I get the concept of what they was trying to do, but it did not work. In fact, again, there are times where I would forget to switch my stance because sometimes something would happen to where I need to switch real quick and I forget to switch back. And then the tank dies and I'm sitting here thinking, why the tank ain't getting healed?
5.0. While we're in the neighborhood, we can also hit number 5, mana pools. If you're a new player, you may wonder why you have like 100 health but 10,000
MP. Yeah, the mana pool was crazy big. I'm glad. I kind of like the system now because I think at one point my MP exceeded my damn HP. It was crazy. I'm just sitting here like, why? And then they was making abilities and spells that would scale, which was kind of silly to me. Yeah, I'm glad that they went with this system currently.
MP at level 1. This too is a Shadowbringer's change, as before 5.0, your mana pool scaled with Piety. Today, Piety still exists, but it simply affects MP regen.
Yeah.
This is also why Ethers stopped getting new additions. Other pots are long beyond their super era, but because MP is now simply a flat 10k, they just froze Ethers in time. And speaking of old stats, number 6 was not spared by Yoshida's scythe, accuracy. As the name implies, this stat determined the hit rate of your spells and abilities, essentially allowing you to miss attacks.
Yeah.
It was technically just a flat attribute you had on gear, materia, and food like anything else, but there was all kinds of complicated math around accuracy caps in A Realm Reborn and Heavensward.
All I'm gonna tell you when I first started the game is I knew that you could miss stuff. What I didn't know is that as a healer, I literally would miss my heals. So my tank would be at like 10%, and then he gets hit by some sort of tank. They didn't really have tank busters, but they did have moves that took a lot of damage, usually AoE damage. Yeah, my tank would die. I'm just gonna call it what it is. He died because I heal, it just missed. What the hell? Like, how the hell you miss a healing? And it was really bad if you were like in a situation where your tank is really high level and then you're at a really low level. And there was a minimum and maximum difference in a dungeon. You most likely was gonna miss a lot of your heals. Kind of very cumbersome and heartbreaking too.
The stat was more or less removed in Stormblood, and while it's still technically dormant in the game files, players effectively can't miss anymore.
Yeah.
As such, the stat was transformed into today's direct hit, a type of mini crit that replaced accuracy.
I was wondering about this direct hit because I was like, I don't remember seeing no direct hit for a while. So that's what happened. Because I knew I wasn't going crazy when I was sitting here looking at this direct. I'm like, direct hit? The hell is that? When I came back, I thought it was weird that they had direct hit. So yeah, the hit accuracy thing, I hated that. I'm glad they got rid of that. Because again, he's saying it was more on tax. I'm telling you, my heals would miss. And it wasn't because of me lagging.
Accuracy on any item that had it. And finally, to close out, number 7 is much more recent, the removal of the Old Feast. PvP is probably one of the most reworked features in this game, and yet it is so perennially neglected by the player base. The current Crystal Conflict stuff is, to Square's credit, one of the better, if not best, iterations that has ever existed, but the feast died so it could live. Teams of 4 were thrown into an arena and basically just TDM'd. When you died, you dropped a pouch of coins, and if the enemy collected them, it contributed toward their final score.
Oh.
If one team collected
I
enough
tried
coins
that.
without
I didn't
dropping their
like
own and
it.
getting looted, of course, then the match finished. It was not a great format, but I can't help but wonder how it would have played with today's better PvP design. Having it at least as an alternative to CC would be fun. Anyways, all the Feast sold ranked rewards, like the Wolf Collar weapons, are now simply available to everyone on a vendor, so it seems like Square has wiped its hands of the mode. Thank you always for your support of this channel.
Okay.
The Chocobos that I took hostage a few
That's
months
it,
ago are
Pete.
doing well.
Yeah, there was so much that's missing. So yeah, I remember a lot of that. They've actually changed a lot in regards to like just the different things that they subtracted and added. I think it was really good. They did a good job. Some of that stuff, it was just kind of pointless. I'm trying to think. I feel like that they're missing. He's probably gonna do another video because I feel like that there's some other stuff that's missing, but I just can't think of anything off the top of my head. But oh, I know that they did away. They reworked a lot of the bosses because there were some bosses that they was just doing impossible as damage and just doing things that didn't make sense. There's been times, and I think they did rework this. There've been times as a Lalafell, I would be in an AoE. Now everybody else is taller than me, so they can get away like that. but then my little short ass legs can't get away. I can't get out of it. I get hit. So I think they changed that because I haven't had that happen in a long time. So they did change something about that. So all right, peeps, let me know y'all's opinion about all of these things that they left out. Do y'all remember these things, or do you think there's some things that that he hasn't mentioned that you want to speak on? Let me know in the comments. Anyways, I am out of here. Peace, and I am gone.